dear Dolly, Polly, shut your eyes. Lie still, lie silent, utter no cries as the witcher.
Bobby Kent was born on May 12, 1973, to Fred and Farrah Kent and attended South Broward High School in Hollywood, Florida. While many adults saw him as a polite and charming kid, many kids, as well as the conspirators, described him as a bully. Around the third grade, Bobby Kent became friends with Marty Puccio. The two lived on the same block. And though they were best friends, there was bad blood between the two. Both parents were aware of this as well. Marty's parents were cautious about the friendship because there were times Marty would often come home with cuts and bruises after hanging out with Kent due to his supposed bullying. Bobby Kent's father, on the other hand, saw Marty's friendship with his son as horrible because Marty was a dropout and he was afraid his influence would rub off on Bobby. Another thing that comes up about Bobby Kent's supposed bullying behavior was due to a rumor that he was using steroids while going to the gym, and his many attacks, abuse, and erratic aggressive behavior was due to the side effect known as roid rage. But over time, things began to change. Around the beginning of 1993, Marty Puccio, who was 20 years old at the time, began dating 18-year-old Lisa Connelly. The relationship was rocky at first because Lisa became frustrated with how much time Marty was spending with Bobby instead of her. So to try to fix that, she fixes Bobby up with her best friend, 17-year-old Allie Willis. Bobby and Allie dated for a few weeks, but eventually she broke up with him due to his abusive behavior towards her. Around June of that same year, Marty had confided to Lisa about the abusive bullying he had suffered over the years at the hands of his friend Bobby. Lisa tried to convince him to sever his friendship, but Marty was hesitant, knowing how Bobby's attitude towards rejection and abandonment was. It was also around this time that Lisa discovered that she was pregnant by Marty and wanted to pursue more than just a sexual relationship with him. But seeing how that was almost impossible without including the third wheel known as Bobby Kent, it was then where supposedly Lisa Connelly came up with the decision that Bobby Kent had to go. So she begins to talk to Marty and other friends about ways to murder Bobby Kent. The first attempt was on July 13, 1993, where according to Allie Willis, Lisa Connelly told her that Bobby Kent threatened to come to Palm Bay, Florida, where she was living at the time, and kill her and her baby from a previous relationship if she didn't come back to Broward County and date him. Believing the story and fearing for her and her child's safety, Allie went to Lisa's house along with her current boyfriend, Donald Simonet, and her friend, Heather Swallows, to discuss murdering Bobby Kent that night. The plan was to go as follows. They were to meet up with Marty and Bobby that night, pick a secluded area where Allie would lure Bobby away with the promise of sex to a secluded area, and while he was distracted, Lisa would shoot him. But the plan failed due to Donald and Heather becoming uncomfortable and leaving, and once Allie had Bobby distracted sexually, Lisa couldn't bring it upon herself to pull the trigger. But despite all that, Lisa Connelly still wanted Bobby Kent dead. So still determined, she sought assistance from Derek Kaufman, a so-called hitman recommended by one of Allie Willis's friends. They met up with him at his home in Rolling Oaks, Florida, to discuss how to kill Bobby. They first discussed trying to get an untraceable gun to do it, but Kaufman told them that procuring a gun at such short notice was not possible. So Lisa, Allie, Donald, and Heather went back to Lisa's house, where they were then joined by Lisa's cousin, Derek DeVerco. It was then where they ultimately decided how they were going to murder Bobby Kent the next night. So late that night, on July 14, 1993, the group that now consists of 7 people met up at Marty's house to finalize their plan. Marty contacted Bobby Kent and convinced him to hang out with the group that night with the promise to race their cars and that Allie Willis wanted to have sex with him again. Before picking him up at 11:30 p.m. that night, the group assembled their weapons, which comprised of 2 knives, a lead pipe, and a baseball bat. They drove to the construction site where, according with their plan, Allie Willis and Heather Swallows lured Bobby Kent to a secluded area. As they distracted him, Donald Simonek came up and stabbed Bobby Kent in the neck. When he yelled out for help, Marty replied by stabbing him in the stomach. By this time, Bobby Kent began apologizing to Marty for it probably dawned on him why they were doing such a thing in the first place. As he tried to flee, Marty, Donald, and Derek Kaufman pursued, continuing to deliver deadly blows, till finally, Marty slit Bobby Kent's throat and hit his head on the ground. It was later followed up by the final blow, which was a baseball bat to the head, delivered by Derek Kaufman. After viciously murdering Bobby Kent, the 4 guys of the group dumped his body at the edge of a marsh. See, that way they figured that as time went by, alligators and other wildlife would eat his decaying corpse. The group then was told to construct alibis in case people started asking questions about Bobby Kent. But as days went by, all those alibis really started to crumble. The main reason? Some of them just, couldn't keep their mouths shut. Because eventually, Allie Willis and Derek Zverko went to the police and confessed. Derek Zverko even went so far as to lead detectives to Bobby Kent's body. Everybody that was involved was arrested and tried, and it went as follows. Marty Puccio was found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to death. But due to mitigating factors, the Florida Supreme Court commuted his sentence to 25 years to life in 1997. He is currently serving time at the Soto Antiques Correctional Institution in Arcadia, Florida. Donald Simonek was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to life plus 15 years for conspiracy. He's currently serving time at Lake Correctional Institution in Clermont, Florida. Derek Kaufman was convicted of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life without parole for 25 years plus a 30-year sentence for conspiracy. He's currently in a state facility in Daytona, Florida. Lisa Connolly was convicted of second-degree murder and at first was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. But due to a successful appeal after her sentence was labeled unduly harsh in 1998, her life sentence was reduced to 22 years. She was released in 2004, to which some people feel like was a slap in the face, seeing as she was seen as the ringleader who organized the murder. Allie Willis was convicted of second-degree murder and was sentenced to 40 years in prison plus 40 years probation. But later, it was reduced to 17 years. She was released in 2001, but still remains on probation. Derek Zverko pled guilty to second-degree murder, but after cooperating with authorities, was sentenced to 11 years in prison. He was released in October of 1999. And finally, Heather Swallows. She pled guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 7 years in prison after taking a plea deal to cooperate with authorities. She was released in February of 1998.
My dear Dolly, Polly, shut your eyes. Lie still, I sigh.